Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through Passion Week. We're going from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday, and every single day we're tracking the life and ministry of Jesus during this Passion Week. Normally I will be in the rocking chair outside, but it is raining, and that would not be a good look. I'd look and smell like a wet dog, and nobody wants to see that. So on Sunday, we had a great Palm Sunday celebration talking about the heart of Jesus. Yesterday, we talked about cleansing the temple. He goes right into the temple on that Monday, sees the money changers taking advantage of poor people, taking advantage of people who were coming from foreign countries to pay homage to the God of Israel. They were ripping them off. Using the house of God and the name of God to enrich themselves and empower themselves, and Jesus would have nothing of it and tore the place apart. So you can imagine that the religious leaders were after Jesus. They wanted him gone. They wanted him dead, unlike ever before. And so here is Tuesday now. He cleansed the temple on Monday, made a mess of the place, completely exposed their corruption. He goes into the campsite on Monday night in the Mount of Olives, enjoys dinner with his friends, enjoys breakfast Tuesday morning, goes right back into Jerusalem, and the battle starts all over again. And the Pharisees, the scribes, the lawyers, they are all over him. They're looking for every mistake that he makes. They are just like gnats flying all around. They are at him and they're annoying him. They're bugging him. Now Jesus is teaching. He's teaching in many parables on Tuesday morning, which was a very busy day, by the way. He's teaching the Word of God. He's teaching, more importantly, the heart of God. And the Pharisees are trying to trap him. They're trying to get him, right? They're trying to have him make a mistake, say something that's wrong so they can say, see, he's from the devil and he needs to go. One of the ways they tried to trap him was by asking him, what is the greatest commandment? The greatest commandment. Now keep in mind they're lawyers, so they understand and they know religious law. In fact, they memorized the first 5 books of the Bible. They memorized the Pentateuch, the books of Moses, the books of the law. They memorized not only the 10 commandments, but the 600 other commandments that are throughout the Old Testament. And they had them in order, they had them categorized, and they imposed these on people in a very harsh, in a very stern way. And so here comes Jesus, and they're going to get him. And so what they say is, Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? Now, there's all kinds of religious arguments about what the greatest commandment is, and you know, which one is superior. Is it the commandments that refer to our worship of God or commandments that refer to our relationship with each other? Now, Jesus was really about his relationship with each other. And so while they're trying to navigate all of these commandments, is it about the commandments that honor God or the commandments that honor each other? They said, Jesus, what is the greatest? They try to trap him, to have him kind of in the dirty fray of religion. And what does Jesus say in Matthew 22? He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and all the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. He got him. He didn't get into the religious fray. He didn't start organizing and categorizing and prioritizing commandments. He says the most important is love. And love covers them all. Love covers them all. If you want to honor God in every way, don't try to navigate all the commandments about how we honor God. Just love God. That's the most important thing. When it comes to how we treat each other, you don't need to get into the fray of trying to categorize which commandments in terms of how we treat each other are the most important. Just love each other. And if we love each other, all the commandments will be fulfilled. All the commandments will be obeyed. So he makes it very simple. Love is the most important, and love covers them all. Sometimes I get some flack about talking about love so much, and sometimes people want to get into what they call meat, which I question. They want to get into all the things that we need to do to honor God or please God and all of the disciplines and sort of religious trappings. And I say, listen, don't blame me. Jesus says all the commandments are covered in love. If we love God and love others, that's a true heart. And out of that will come a great obedience to God and a great way to treat one another. So here Jesus goes from this declaration that love is the greatest commandment, and the Pharisees keep coming, and they keep coming, and they keep coming. And so finally it's like all these gnats are swirling around, you're trying to keep them away, then finally you just snap, right? You just scream, right? Well, Jesus absolutely loses it on the Pharisees, loses it on the scribes, loses it on the legalists. He goes after them, and he goes after them hard. He uses language that he doesn't use anywhere in his ministry. It's called the Seven Woes. The Seven Woes. Woe in the ancient Near East during the time of Jesus was the most extreme thing you could say. In fact, it's not really a word, it's more of a sound. It's like that we would say, whoa, 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 whoa. But it's not about, hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's about, whoa, whoa, whoa. You are in danger. You are in peril. And condemnation is coming your way. In fact, the judgment of God is coming your way. So one woe, it's almost like a curse. If you put a woe on somebody, it'd almost be like putting a curse on somebody. You are condemned and you are under threat, extreme threat. So it just came out as a noise like, whoa, angry, whoa. One woe would be devastating for somebody. Two woes would be irreparable. If you put two curses, two woes on somebody, that relationship would be irreparable. Jesus put 7 woes on the Pharisees. Now, if you know anything about numbers in the Bible, in the ancient Near East, numbers were pretty important. 7 is the number of perfection. Jesus unleashes 7 perfect woes. In other words, you are perfectly cursed. Because of your religion and the way you perpetrate your religion and weaponize religion to manipulate people, coerce people, take their money, right? All the things that still unfortunately happen today, lay burdens, heavy burdens on people so that they never think they're good enough for God. And all they do is walk around whenever they think of God, I'm just under His curse, I'm under His condemnation, He must be disappointed with me, and all I feel is separation. Jesus says people who perpetrate that, they're the ones who are under stern judgment from God. 7 woes. So let's talk about these quickly here. The first woe, he says, you religious leaders, you're shutting out the kingdom of heaven. Now they thought they were opening the kingdom of heaven because they thought God wanted all their obedience to all these commandments. And Jesus says, no, you're actually shutting off the kingdom of heaven. He says this, woe to you scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut off the kingdom of heaven from people. For you do not enter it yourself, nor do you allow others to enter it. In other words, religion tends to be exclusive, shutting the doors. Only the pure can come in. Only the obedient can come in. Only the righteous can come in. Well, Jesus came to fling the doors wide open, and we see that time and time again during the Passion Week. Jesus says, woe to you if you shut the kingdom. Woe to you if you are exclusive. Jesus wants the kingdom of heaven to be inclusive. Everybody is welcome. The second woe, Jesus calls them sons of hell. That's nice, right? Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you travel around on sea and land to make one proselyte. And when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourself. So they're going out, the word we would use is evangelizing, and they're trying to make converts, right? Follow God, obey God, believe His laws. Jesus says if that's your definition of what gets you into a relationship with God, not only are you a son of hell, but you are making sons of hell. This is not about trying to get people to follow religious rules. Jesus says that's what makes sons of hell. In order to follow God, it's about the heart. It's about love. It's about being loved by God and loving other people. And so if we are so excited about winning people to a religion, realize that we are making sons of hell. Jesus says, listen, I want children. I want daughters and sons who really understand what it is to be loved by a Heavenly Father and then love other people. The third woe is about oaths, and it's very long and it's kind of complicated. I'll just summarize it. The religious people at the time were wondering, what do we swear by? What do we promise? So it would be something like this. I promise by the gold of the temple that I will follow and obey God. And essentially what Jesus is saying is you are having all these arguments about what you promise by. And the way we would say it is talk is what? Cheap. Talk is cheap. So we can promise, God, I'll obey you and I'll follow you, which is what they were doing. They were just saying that with their words. God, I'll obey you and I'll follow you. Jesus says that is cheap. You don't need oaths. Just live a life of honoring God. Live a life, as Jesus says, of love, receiving love, giving love. That's the greatest commandment. The fourth woe is about tithing. Tithing. Now, tithing is giving 10% to the work of God. That was very much a centerpiece of the religion of the time. And here's the woe that comes down. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you tithe, you give 10% of your spices. So they would take their spices from their spice rack, and they would, with razor blades, dole out 10% of their spices, of every spice, and give that to the temple. And they were thinking they were being very religious because they were doing just the most minute details. They were tithing everything and thinking that they're right with God because they're so amazing at how they tithe. Jesus says, hypocrites! You tithe the mint and dill and cumin and have neglected the weightier provisions of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. Justice, mercy, and faithfulness. That's how we treat each other. Jesus says you're so concerned about giving God 10% of everything and all these religious things, yet you forget the heart of the law. The heart of the law is about people and how we treat people, bringing justice to people, mercy to people, and faithfulness, being there for somebody as a good friend. The fifth woe is about cups. Now, they cleaned their cups. They wanted to make sure their cups were clean. They couldn't touch any unclean thing. So Jesus says this, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and the outside of your dish, but inside is full of robbery and self-indulgence." And so Jesus says, on the outside, you look like wonderful, religious people, all clean on the outside. But Jesus says, remember what I did yesterday? Remember I was destroying your merchant tents and your merchant tables as you're trying to rip people off? Jesus says, on the inside, you are robbers. On the inside, you are about yourself. You're self-indulgent. Jesus says, I see right through you. The sixth woe is about tombs. They were so concerned about their dishes and plates being clean and the appearance of being clean that Jesus then says you are the most filthy thing, which in their faith would be corpses. Corpses were considered to be unclean. And so Jesus says this, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You're like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside appear beautiful, but on the inside are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanliness." So they're all about religious cleanliness, right? Having everything nice and tidy on the outside. People would look at them on the outside, and they'd have their religious garb on, their religious clothes on, their religious hat on, their religious tunic on. They'd do all these external religious things in the temple right on the exact days, and they would observe the Sabbath perfectly, and they would observe the worship ceremonies perfectly, but on the inside, they're rotting corpses. Jesus says, I see right through you. You are the most unclean. And that is the irony here. Very often, religious people will believe themselves are clean because they have the right doctrines, the right behavior, the right religion in their own minds. But on the inside, they're full of corruption. And they lay these burdens on other people and convince them that they're not as holy or pure as they are, so they feel separation from God. And the religious leaders are kind of lying about it the whole time. On the inside, their heart is as unclean as anyone's. Jesus ends with a seventh woe, and he says, you are so proud that you say you wouldn't have killed the Old Testament prophets, but they're just about to kill Jesus. And Jesus makes a point of that. You think you're better than the people who killed the Old Testament prophets. You're about to kill the Son of God. So he ends in this way. You serpents, you brood of vipers, how will you escape the sentence of hell? And when Jesus uses the word hell here in a previous woe, he's talking about Gehenna. And Gehenna was a valley outside of Jerusalem. You can go to hell right now. In fact, actually you probably can't because of the travel restrictions. But when these travel restrictions are over, you can go to hell. You can fly into Tel Aviv probably and then take a drive to Jerusalem. And there's a valley called the Valley of Hinnom right outside of Jerusalem. That's what Jesus was talking about when he says, how can you escape the sentence of hell? That valley is where the trash of the city was dumped. That valley has a reputation of even child sacrifice from a foreign god. It's just a nasty, gross, burning, stinking valley. Jesus says to the religious leaders, that's who you are. That's who you are. And that's the culture that you live in. And you will not escape that. You will not escape that kind of judgment, that kind of life. Now, Jesus goes hard after the religious leaders. He goes real hard after them. And so, I want us to ask ourselves, is there any of this in us? Is there any of this where we're saying, we're trying to project a certain kind of a righteousness on the outside? And we're trying to say, hey, I believe the right things, and I do the right things, and I worship the right way, and we judge these people, and then we judge others and judge others. And there might be that self-righteousness. There might be that sense that I'm so right, and I'm so good, and I'm so religious, God might look down favorable on me, but not those other people. That's shutting the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. We need to be inclusive and warm and welcoming. That's what Jesus stood for. And the only people he ever condemned are the people who stood in the way of God's grace. His unconditional grace poured out through Jesus Christ, his Son. Because Jesus ultimately gives his life to pay for the sins of the world. He became a victim of all the world's evil, and then he rose again from the dead to conquer it. And of course, we'll get there on Sunday morning during our Easter service. Thanks so much for being here. Enjoy God's grace, enjoy his love, and enjoy living in the greatest commandment to love God and love others, and enjoy this incredible freedom of knowing that there's nothing that separates us from God, that Jesus came to fling those doors wide open and we can enjoy him. See you tomorrow.